I talked to a guy the other day, Val, he owns the world record for handstands on a skateboard. Like he did a downhill handstand on a skateboard. I think it was for like 3.25 miles or something. My point is learning how these people identified what they could do, liked to do, how to do it different has been kind of like a master course in just creative thinking about my business.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 128 of the podcast. It's September 6th, 2023, as we record this. Our main topic today is accountability buddies and author masterminds and how group coaching can help us. We'd like to thank all of our existing patrons for believing in us and in the podcast. Our podcast is sponsored by our patrons at patreon.com/Valerie Isan. For as low as $1 a month, you can get a postcard from me, a shout out on the podcast. Announcements can be made for you on the air, and other benefits increase as the tiers increase. There's lots of goodies there. So go check it out, patreon.com/Valerie Isan. Also, patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre. I can't wait to talk to you more about that. We don't have any comments from listeners this week or questions, so I'm going to slip right into announcements. I have a group coaching cohort that's starting next Tuesday, September 12th. That's regularly $500 for 3 months of weekly coaching. And you can go to valerieisan.com/shopping and enter the discount code podcast, and that will get you 10% off. Also, I know this is just crazy early to talk about this, but it's really not, and I'll tell you why. So retreat tickets for 2024, we just got done with the retreat, but they sell out really fast. So last year they sold out in 3 months, I think. By February they were sold out. So for an August retreat. So I'm going to open early bird registration November 1st. But if you are a patron, you can get early access to that early bird registration. So for patrons, I'm going to open it up October 1st. So that's only a couple weeks from now. So October 1st, next month, if you want early access for the tickets that I'm sure will sell out because they sold out this last year, you can become a patron this month. And then you'll automatically get the early bird registration link next month, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
It does. Made sense to me.
And
if you're going to travel, I mean, anything you've got to do, might as well do it early, right? If you can see yourself going to that August event, like might as well book it now.
Yeah, and the monthly payments, if you choose that route, are super inexpensive at this time of year,
Right.
Then it becomes kind of a no-brainer. Okay, any announcements from you?
Nope.
Okay. You want to slip right into author update because the big reveal behind you is.
Yeah, this is a different space. I'm coming to you from 15 miles south of my previous location. So
it's a big deal to move up house and home, even if it's 15 blocks,
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. Actually, I kind of was walking through the neighborhood last night and I looked at the house next door and I thought, would it be any easier to move next door?
Probably not.
Probably not. I'd still have to put everything in boxes. I'd still have to move them. I'd still have to unpack them. So yeah, moving is moving. It's been done for the most part. And it's great. Yeah. It's just settling in, and that's
getting used to your space and more light. You said this office has more light than the other one.
Yeah, definitely. Like you can, I mean, if anyone's watching on YouTube, it's like, yeah, I'm looking outside a window at some trees and a sky. Whereas before I was underground, basically, and that's a big adjustment and a great adjustment. So yeah. Light is definitely was a big factor in this. Like I just couldn't bear being in a basement anymore. So
Well, I'm glad you have an office with windows and natural light coming in. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. What
I
about
do
you?
I do have the
What's
better office of the two for me and my husband. This room
oh,
has two windows, and yeah, he only
he's
has
got
one little
one.
one. Yeah,
Oh,
but we are also kind of like quasi moving, like we're not moving, but we're replacing the floors, so we have boxed up everything. So my office is now completely boxed up and ready for the carpet to be ripped out, and that's happening for us next week. So, and this weekend I'm speaking at the Southwest Washington Writers Conference, so that's super exciting. So today after this podcast, I'm gonna be like, fine tuning my presentation and making sure the slide deck is all perfect and works, and that sort of stuff. I make sure they're going to be printing off all my handouts, so I don't have to worry about that. But I still want to bring a couple just in case, like they never show up for some reason, and they can
every
photocopy them there.
conference, right? Every conference you've ever been to, somebody has a problem with handouts. It's just a
Right.
fact of conference
Or
life.
or with the audio tech, stuff. So I'm
Oh
gonna,
gosh, yeah.
I every time I make a slide deck presentation, I also just imagine that it won't work and that I can just give the talk by myself without the slide deck. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes I
I always like
get
people who do this one when they're like, my mic is not working. If they have the lab, they're doing that one and they're like pulling their shirt up and talking into their shirt. It always makes me laugh. I'm not getting any mic.
Is this
So you
on?
memorize the
Let's
whole,
see.
is that, do you mean, so
No, I
you have
don't
like a
memorize it.
visual,
I just don't have the visual aid. Although I have been kind of lax and lazy in past presentations where I've used the slide presentation as my notes, but that wouldn't work, if for some reason I couldn't do the slide. Well, I guess I would, because I would have my laptop there, but
right?
often they don't want the laptop. They just say, bring your USB stick, and we've
Right.
got a whole setup. Don't worry about bringing your Apple computer because we won't have the attachments or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to definitely print off a couple of even slide deck, notes or something, just so that I have something to work with in case it doesn't. Also, master classes. So this is my first time doing a master class. When I receive a master class as a student, it's always been, intimate, not very many people. We kind of
Right.
sit around a table, and there isn't like a presentation that happens really. So I'm kind of wondering if I should go that route, because in my head I was like, oh, I've got to create this slide deck presentation, but maybe I should make it more intimate. I know this is last minute. You should have thought of this weeks ago, but
Well, and it's funny, we should talk about this in this venue formally. I think we should consider this because you're teaching one in this coming weekend, and I'll be
Mhm.
teaching one at the end of September.
Okay.
Maybe we should make a podcast subject of conference stuff. We should do that.
Or just, yeah, or teaching or workshop teaching,
Yeah.
because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be in a conference setting, because I like giving workshops just locally too.
True.
Okay.
Those are almost more fun. And yeah, I'm teaching a master class, and I got really intimidated when I was asked to turn it into a master class. Um, Not intimidated, like I couldn't do it, but just like
A
um
little bit of stage fright, kind of like, oh.
well, I think it's partly because of what you're talking about with the idea of like the intimacy of it. Like there's
Mhm.
going to be fewer people. Those people are, my perception is that those people are going to be more, I guess, astute. They're looking for a higher
Advanced
level.
in their author journey or whatever, maybe.
Well, yeah, I guess I think that in conferences a lot, like I wander when I'm at a conference as an attendee. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'll go do this, I guess. I think when you teach the masterclass, you're not getting that wandering student just looking for something to kill the 2 hours before lunch or
Mhm.
before their pitch. You're actually getting someone who's like, I want
I
to learn
paid
this
for this
topic.
extra, yeah.
This
This is,
person's going to teach me that.
yeah.
Ooh, I'm that
So I've got
person.
to be extra good.
I've got to
But
be
this
that
isn't
person.
something I've been teaching for a long time. So
Right. You're good at it.
I
You know what
just
you're talking about.
haven't given this presentation necessarily before, but yeah. So, all right.
Well, we
So that's
shouldn't
what's
spoil that
happening.
topic if we do that as a full podcast. We should not spoil the topic by talking about it now.
All
let's
right.
just say.
I'm stopping
No
talking.
spoilers.
What's your author update? You moved.
I moved. Well, and also author Erick Mertz doesn't stop writing, even though he's moving. So yeah, I'm about finished with the rewrite of my novel. It's about done. Um, I'm excited about that. I've committed to, and this I've committed to for the rest of the year, like launching that book, marketing the books that are there, taking a lot of time getting because the next book is written. I don't, it's like the discovery draft has been written. And so I don't feel as much pressure to get the next thing going.
Mhm.
So I have time. So I'm going to be doing a little bit more of like, I'm looking forward to the fall and early winter because I can key in a little bit more on like, here's what I've got. Here's how I'm going to market it. I'm going to rebrand a book or two. Yeah. So moving in here was definitely like, that is the big update, but also like this for me was signaling just like new benchmarks, new goals, like
New
just,
energy.
yeah.
Mhm.
And capitalizing on that. And so yeah, and I've got some like old short stories that I've like started and I really liked, and I haven't been able to commit to finishing those because I'm so committed to finishing the uh the novel. So it's like, you know what, I'm going to finish those couple of short stories, see what happens with those.
Awesome. Lots
What
of
about you?
fun new things. I'm reading, what am I reading right now?
Oh no, what's your author update, or is it
That was my author update. You know,
okay?
I boxed everything up.
Boxing,
The
right?
flooring's next week. I'm talking at a master class, and yeah, that's pretty much been what I've been working on for the most part. And thinking about the cohort that's today next week. And yeah, that's pretty much my author update.
So then what are you reading?
What am I reading? What am I reading? I finished Lucky Red. Oh, the Essex Serpent, which is a takes place in it's one of those period novels, like takes place in 18 something in Britain. And I
Okay.
just like maybe 4 chapters in, and so you don't really know anything yet. They're just still setting the stage and the characters. I think there's going to be like 3 main characters. It's a So at the very first chapter, she's like on her way to her husband's funeral. So she's a widow, but very young widow. She doesn't Apparently she didn't like her husband.
Mm.
Or he was abusive or something like that. I don't know. So basically at the beginning of the book, she's a widow and she doesn't feel bad about that.
Oh, got it.
And but she's got the care of some 10-year-old autistic boy too. So
Interesting.
yeah. And then there's another love interest, but I think it's unrequited. So yeah, I'm just learning the characters, but it sounds like it's going to be kind of a gothic mystery /
Love it.
romance. So
Love it.
yeah, I kind of dig that genre.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it too.
And my next novel, yeah, the one that I got the idea for at the retreat, I think, I know it's going to be a historical novel, and I've not written and revised. I have written a historical novel before, but I trunked it because I was like, this is going to take way more research than I want to deal with right now. So, yeah, I've never written a historical novel with the intent of publishing it before. So yeah, that historical novel that I trunked was my NaNoWriMo novel from
Oh,
like 2010 or something like that, or even earlier. It was my first NaNoWriMo attempt. So
oh,
yeah, it pretty much was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything with this. I like scanned it I think it was a couple years ago. I found it again in some like email download something old computer file. And I was like, oh wow, this is interesting. Like, I don't think this will ever be revised. I think I made the decision right then to be like, okay, this was just practice and not look at it ever again.
Funny note on the term NaNoWriMo. I had an SEO person work on my website years ago, and they did some research on keywords that my website was ranking for, and I'll never forget him laughing like, and there's clearly some problems with your site. And I said, well, what's the problem? immediately got serious, like, what's the problem? And
Yeah.
he said, your site is ranking for something called NaNoWriMo. Like, he said, there must be something wrong. And I said, well, why don't you go Google what that is? And then he got really embarrassed because I think he
As an
was trying to
SEO
sound like
person. Yeah.
was trying like, I figured something out, guy. Let me tell you what I figured out. And it's like, yeah, no, you figured out what every author, like young author, is like, kind of year points around, like that's their North Star, but like it's not a problem. So yeah.
So what are you reading?
I finished reading Sea of Tranquility
Oh,
by
how was
I
that?
it was really, it was like the best episode of X-Files you've ever seen.
Really?
It was, when I say like like awesome, like it was really great. It was hard to read fast because it was like the best. Okay, let me put it this way. This is going to be the weirdest book review statement, but it was like the best episode of X-Files and also like episode of Nova. Remember that show Nova that used to be on PBS that they talk about science and
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah.
and things with Carl Sagan, or like, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson does it now. It was so like, there was a lot of real science in it, like a lot of real metaphysics and science in it, wrapped into a storyline. And it was just, yeah, you couldn't read it fast because every chapter, every section of the book presented questions about basically like your perception of reality.
Hmm.
um and yeah, I think anyone who has questions, like a kind of a metaphysical, anybody who has like metaphysical questions and curiosity should read that book and just give yourself time. It's a short book and it's relatively breezy. Like if you look at the page, it's all very like, it looks like a fast read, but you just can't, if your brain is working, you can't read it fast. So yeah,
Interesting.
read it.
It's one of those books I've picked up and read the back of many, many times and never committed to.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I might have to revisit that. Because the
I'm
first
gonna
book I read by her was Station 11, and it had come so hyped to me that I didn't
Yeah.
actually like it as well as I probably would now if I read it. And I have thought about rereading it just as like see, in
Yeah.
real life instead of hyped life what I
Right.
thought of
Instead
it.
of hyped life. That's funny. Um, yeah, I could see that. Like this book came with no hype for me. Like I just picked it up off the shelf. I've seen the cover a million times and
Hmm.
I love that art style. It's kind of that hazy, grainy, kind of looks like a mural from like the 60s or 70s or something.
Hmm.
So I like the artwork. And I like here's something, book covers for me, like there's all this talk about your book cover has to like fit your genre, capital F, fit
Hmm.
your genre. Um, but her books are all very like, they look like literary novels instead of science fiction novels.
Hmm.
And to me, that's like makes them all the more intriguing because I feel like, what concept are we talking about that we're getting in this book versus like, oh look, another spaceship and a distant star or something. Like it didn't, you see what I'm saying? Like it went
Hmm.
so far off of type that it was more intriguing than a book that fits the cover, like the type of the cover. Just read it. Just
Just
pick
read
it up
it.
and read it.
What
And
about
I will,
Camp
yeah.
Slaughter? Did you finish
Pardon?
that? Camp Slaughter, did
Yeah.
you finish that? Okay.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
updating your book list here. See.
Opposite book,
Yeah.
totally opposite book. Um, and also, I recently picked up the most recent issue of Asimov Science Fiction, this special, slightly spooky issue. So I've been reading that. I love those like little pulpy, you know, magazines. I feel good having them around.
What is it called? It's a magazine, a journal that's
Yeah, it's like
released every.
Asimov Science Fiction, Journal of Science Fiction. Same publishers that do like I think they do like Ellery's Mystery Magazine, and they're like the last of the old pulp magazines, the
Mhm.
old, you get the real pulpy newsprint and the
Uh-huh.
splashy cover. And I was at the bookstore, I was picking up the new internet stuff
Uh-huh.
from Xfinity, and this is not a commercial for Xfinity, although they're a great product. Um, And I stopped at the coffee shop, saw a pulp magazine. I thought, you know what? Of all the stress of moving, of all these books, I'm going to add another one. So I went and grabbed this like pulpy magazine and threw it in the stack. So, but I
Nice.
didn't tell anybody.
All right. Well, let's get talking about accountability buddies and author masterminds. I kind of feel like you're my accountability buddy because we
Am
meet
I?
every week. We
We do.
talk about what we've accomplished.
We
You
do.
know, the only difference, I guess, would be we don't really, I mean, we author update each other, but then we don't. What I see as a accountability group or something is to celebrate your wins, which you and I do, but also to say like, hey, this is what I want to accomplish this week. These are my goals for the week. And then checking back in and saying, yeah, I didn't finish that because of XYZ, or, I almost didn't do it. And then I knew I was meeting you. So I did it. So I can tell you I did it, which is the real reason you have an accountability buddy, I
I
think.
was going to ask what I've never had one deliberately. I guess now that you've said that I'm yours, I feel like you're mine um, as well. I guess I didn't realize that. I was going to ask, what is well, let's just ask bluntly, like, what is when someone comes needing that, what problem does that solve for them? Is it starting? Is it finishing? Is it different for everybody? Like what? Yeah.
Let me clarify the question. Are you asking
I
what
think I
would
wrapped a question in a rant. So
well, sometimes I don't know if this is what you're getting at or not, but
what problem does that solve for people when they seek an accountability buddy or an accountability coach? What are they like in general? What problem are they looking to solve in their writing practice?
it does differ for everyone. But I would say when I started doing research, I was interviewing lots of people just to see like what are their challenges as an author in today's world? Like what is it that stymies them? Where do they get stuck? And often it was a project that they either it was a project that they had that was just like hanging on, like I've been trying to write this book for 8 years and I just can't get through it, that kind of problem. Or it was, I need a regular writing schedule, or I just can't seem to get, started on this thing and get it organized. So it's either an organizational, like healthy habit sort of writing routine issue that they're having, or it's I have this big project and I just can't get it done. Why not? Problem.
So in general, are these another generality? Because I think we need to set some definitions for anything.
Mhm.
Is it generally new authors? You talk about someone who's been working on something for a long time, or is it experienced authors? Like is there a typical person that's seeking that kind of thing?
There really
I mean, everybody
isn't.
could use it, but
There really
it's not.
isn't. Yeah, I think it might be situational for some people. Like, I'm moving house and I just can't get, my
Right.
regular routine just keeps falling through the cracks. And I just need a little boost of somebody that I can be accountable to, that I can show up to a weekly critique group or a weekly, accountability group. Or sometimes I used to be in like a mastermind group, which is accountability of a sort, but it also has many people in it so that you have many people in an accountability group too, or you can. I like group coaching and mastermind groups because you have the ability to kind of access that group mind, that hive mind. So instead of just talking to an individual coach, which is nice because then you can just have private conversations and you get all the attention and all the time spent on you.
Right.
But group coaching is cool because you can present this question or this challenge that you're struggling with, and you don't just get one person's feedback, you get several people, and sometimes you'll come up with ideas that you hadn't thought of before based on kind of a popcorn situation, like somebody says something and somebody else, oh, well, what about if you did it this way based on the other person's feedback? Does that make sense? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of like that dynamic. So I've liked going to mastermind groups before, or group coaching before, because of that. I just, it's mini community too. You get the
Yeah.
camaraderie of other writers, or I mean, that's the ones I've been to, but it wouldn't have to be other writers. It could be, like a business accountability group. I've been in those before too, where you want to grow
Yeah.
your business.
When my wife first moved to Portland from Atlanta, she was a massage therapist, and her mom, and shout out to my mother-in-law, she was a fantastic business person, and she was one of those people who was never afraid to network and connect, and like that was just her thing. um, my wife shows up, and it's like she's immediately going to these networking groups, accountability groups, to get her business started. And it was just something that was so new to me, like the idea that, as a business person, you have, you get the opportunity not just to like check in about your work, but like hear what works for other people. it's
Mm-hmm.
it's um it's got to be helpful,
Yeah, for
especially when
sure.
you're starting out.
Mm-hmm. And also for stamina. I think that if you have a business that you're trying to run, or if you are writing a novel, which takes a long time, there's a lot of
You're
stamina that's
trying to write a
involved.
novel. You're always trying to write a
Yes,
novel. Yeah.
always. Yeah, when you're writing a book, not only do you have to put words on the page every day, or I say every day in quotation marks, whatever every day is for you,
Right.
but you're writing your words on a regular basis. And then once you get to the end, you have to reread it and make sure it all makes sense. And then you hand it to someone else to make sure it makes sense to someone else. And then you fix the holes. And then you know, read through it again. And now you hand it to someone else to fix all the typos and the sentence structure. And, so it just takes time. And sometimes people don't naturally have the stamina to do something like that. So new authors benefit from an accountability group coaching sessions, because it keeps them going. It keeps them thinking about their project, making forward momentum on their project. When they hit a stuck spot, there's people that they can go to check in with, and to see, like, why am I stuck? It's really helpful,
Right.
because people ask questions then. Well, why is this a problem for you? This doesn't seem like a problem to me. Oh, no. Oh, what, it just gives you different perspectives on things that you thought were a problem that really aren't.
So an interesting sort of, this is tangential, but you'll see that it fits, is one of my ghostwriting projects currently. I interview business people, and they basically, the project is that these business people buy their way into a book that's branded with a famous person. The famous person goes on the cover, and then all of these successful business people get a chapter in the book, and it's prestige publishing. I was not aware of it until I started working on the project. Um, I was not aware of it as a niche in the publishing world. But it's interesting to sit and talk to these people, and I've spoken to marketing professionals, real estate agents, corporate recruiters. I talked to a guy the other day, Val, that was he owns the world record for handstands on a skateboard. Like he did a downhill handstand on a skateboard. I think it was for like 3.25 miles or something. My point is, learning how these people identified what they could do, liked to do, how to do it different, has been kind of like a master course in just creative thinking about my business. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's really has stopped me in my tracks a few times, and forced me to say, let's rethink how I do this. So I can imagine, as an author, because writing a book, as I said, you're always trying to write a book, even if it's your 10th novel.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're always trying. Knowing how other people are doing it or not doing it has to be really valuable. Um, because everything is trial and error. It has to just be invaluable to hear another person say, well, I scrapped chapter 1 25 times before I got the one I liked. That gives you permission as the author to say, okay, I can restart chapter 1 because that person did it. So
yeah, for
wow.
sure. And that's what I like about group coaching.
And
And
it's
just
concrete too, right? I mean, I can imagine, again, you read it on a blog and you have somebody who's a blog or a vlogger or something, and they're telling you what they do. It's a little more abstract because that person's just a figure. But at this point, when you're talking to someone across the room from you, it's real. Like, okay, this person's doing this. I know this person. I can trust it. So,
I think what I like a lot about those business or any of the groups, mastermind, group coaching, writing coaches that meet regularly, any of those kind of coaching situations, what I really like about them is that my dreams come true, which sounds really like cheesy and Disney, but totally works. Like if you have a project, whatever that is, whether it's writing a book or putting a new patio in your backyard or moving house or whatever the project is, it is so voluminous. Is that a word? It's so large,
voluminous.
voluminous. It's so big that it's like swimming around in like this purple yarn cloud. Like it just gets so overwhelming. And being able to either it's overwhelming to figure out how to get something done, whether it's a dream of yours or not, or if it is that pie in the sky, like, yeah, maybe someday in 15 years I could accomplish this thing, whatever that is for you.
Right.
But being able to meet weekly with a checklist, like these are the steps it's going to take to get me to this, 5-year plan or whatever, or writing this book, and being able to systematically go through each step, report back, see what works, what doesn't work, consistently going back to someone and reporting what you've done and celebrating what you've done and figuring out why you haven't done this step, you know, just makes dreams comes true. It eventually the project gets done and you can say, I'm a published author now. You can say, I've written 4 books now. You can say,
Right.
you can say the thing that you want to say. I have
Right.
traveled to China. I have started my own business. I have moved house. I have gotten married. I have, whatever the goal is, whatever the project is, you can accomplish it little steps at a time. And it really helps to have, like I said, somebody to check in with that because it does make you do the thing. I've been to, how many years have you been in your critique group?
We started in 2019, so just 4.
Okay.
Oh,
And
not just 4,
just
4.
for
That's
4 years,
yeah,
4 whole years.
yeah,
I was in mine for 10 years. Like, and the whole reason that got started for us was so that we would write. It was like finding time to write. I don't know. I had small little kids, but I went to a meeting every week and I had to show up with pages because that's what we did in the group. We read them out loud right there and critiqued them. So it became
right.
an accountability group, just by default. Like I had to do it. I had to show up. I had to write pages. So being in a group like makes you do the thing that you need to do so that you can say, "Yay, I did it" in front of people.
And I think part of why part of my questions, part of my curiosity and what fuels my questions is that, and I've never lacked the motivation. What I've lacked is the, I guess, insight or wisdom to see that even with the motivation, process requires refinement.
Mm,
Um, so, because I think the minute you believe that I know the process, I know how this works, I know what I'm doing, you've stopped growing, right?
mhm.
And I learned this actually from one of the people I was interviewing for that project. Is like the minute you know what you're doing, you've kind of plateaued and don't get to this place of certainty get to stay in a place of curiosity. So what I'm hearing is that what an accountability group and like this sort of either the accountability buddy, the coaching, or the cohort type of process keeps you curious about what other people are doing, how it works. It keeps you out of that place of like stagnating certainty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being in that place where you are curious helps you, well, ask questions. So when you're with someone else, it's almost collaborative. I mean, it's not that you're having someone co-write your book with you if you're in a group coaching situation,
Right.
but I think it does allow you to see things in different ways and try new things that maybe you wouldn't have tried if you weren't just saying out loud what you were doing. You know how sometimes like thoughts will come to you as you're explaining something to somebody else, you're, like you said, refining it, you're understanding it better, you're getting new ideas as you're saying the thing out loud, you know? So it really does help you grow, I think, as an individual and as a writer and as a business person.
And I think it keeps you as a like acknowledging the reality that no two books are going to be alike.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk to any author who's on their 10th book, they would probably say that each, they could describe the birthing process of each one of those 10
Exactly.
books.
I've had that experience. Have you? Like writing in a
Oh yeah.
series, even writing in a
Yeah.
series about the same person, you've had like
Yeah.
every novel is different.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
really true.
I think it rewards that part of being a creative person, right? Is that if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be kind of a rote, rubber stamp it, kind of like it's done, it's done, it's done, you would have gotten in a different field, you would have gotten into something else. And I'm not to speak ill of something else, but I think that you're not going to get into either entrepreneurship or creativity or creative entrepreneurship if you're not willing to take the process, break it down, put it back together again, do it over and over and over again, and get some joy out of that. So I would hope that people who go through this process it just restores and reinvigorates that joy.
Absolutely.
You are my accountability partner too. I've been thinking about it the whole time we're sitting here. Like, yeah, that's true. Like, I do think about it on Mondays and Tuesdays about what am I going to say, like, like knowing that I have to say out loud what I'm doing or what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
It gives some context to my week, and it gives some context to, it makes me examine my process a little more than I would without this. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
that's accountability. Yay for the win.
Accountability for the win. I love it.
Thanks for talking with me about this. It's one of my favorite things to
Oh,
talk about,
I
actually.
could tell. And checklists. If you can get a
Yep.
checklist in the topic and some accountability.
Checklists make things happen.
Well, let's just before we close the
Okay.
door on this,
Uh-huh.
let's talk about where that checklist comes into the whole thing. Like let's marry your two joys together,
Uh-huh.
checklists and accountability. And so like
So
for
when
people, go for it.
I was just
Marry
gonna
them.
give
Do
you the
it.
rundown. The rundown when I do group coaching, I have often called it my author action plan group coaching. It's big mouthful, so I don't always say that, but that's kind of what happens. So the first week they show up, they say, this is what I'm working on, this is where I'm stuck, this is where I'm struggling. And I create a checklist based on whatever project that they're working on. And we talk about that and we refine it together. Like, does this make sense? Is there something I'm forgetting? What else am I, not knowing about this process? How do you, whatever, go through that process. And then every week when they come in, I have their checklist because it's a shared Google Doc or whatever. So I have their checklist too. So then we can talk about like, what did you do on this checklist and what do you still need to do? And if it's something that still hasn't been done, why isn't it done? Does it need to be broken down even more for you? That sort of thing. So that's how I marry the two, the coaching and the checklists together.
And if you're not watching on YouTube, people, she's smiling. She's got a great big grin. You could tell this is, look, that works, right? Because I think we lose track of and those steps are not intuitive, right? So you might create a checkbox for one thing, and it might actually, for you, the author or the receiver of that support, it might not, that step that is in the checkbox might not actually be the step. It might be something different for you, right? Like, you see, like, you might need it broken down. You might need it in a different language. You might need it a different phrase, a different way to actually move you forward, right? Because that yeah, interesting.
Absolutely.
You're such a process person, You're such a process person.
I guess I never thought about myself that way, but I really am. I do take joy in the process, in the doing. All
I
right.
think that you have to. If you don't, I don't want to say go do something else, but I don't think you could be a creative professional or an entrepreneur if you weren't loving the process. So
I disagree with that, but I do think that process is a lot of art making, a lot of what we do is process. But I think that you can not like parts of your process and still be a good artist.
right. But I think what artists tend to do is, I think as you get skills and those things become second nature, we lose sight of what those steps are. And we lose sight of it as a process. A painter that mixes colors together to create their palette forgets that they've tried to make that shade of blue 100 times. They've forgotten. They just know that it's this and this and this mixed together, and they get that shade of blue. I think because they've created that shortcut. And I think if we stop ourselves and look at the whole process, it's like we've created a lot of shortcuts that if we really look at it, like, oh, I'm actually doing a lot of things here. It's just, for me, it's second nature. I was trying to explain to my kid, like, kind of writing and how I come up with story and how it works. And it took a long time, because I was like, oh, I also do this. I forget that I do this, because I do it second nature. So anyway.
All right. I know that we're out of time now, so we'll have to come to the close. I could talk about this for a long time, but even as you were talking, I was thinking of all these other little points that were like pinging in my head like a pinball machine, but we were out of time. So we'll have to, if you have any questions about this, feel free to email me, Valerie@valerieeson.com, or you can go through the podcast, writercraftpodcast@gmail.com, and ask any questions about any of the topics that we discuss here, or if you have any comments for the show or ideas for what you'd like to hear more of.
Yeah, if you have any idea what I should do with the blank space behind me, if you have any, what poster should I put up behind me, you just let me know. Put it in the comments.
Right on. I'll talk to you next week, Erick.
Talk to you soon. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.